Welcome everyone to the Indie Books International Q&A. So this is a monthly Q&A we have with authors, potential authors, people who want to know how to plan, write, publish, and promote books. So it's a community that we have, and we have some of our faculty members on and some of our clients and some people who just want to know what we have to say, and welcome all. So the topic today is how to write a book in 90 days. And what's brought this about is we've created a beta test program that we're taking 5 people into the program. I just wanted to talk about the general concept first, because frankly, we've been crushing it this year on creating books. And we have found that we can get a sloppy first copy, which also known as the first draft. One of my authors says the bad words. I said, well, they're not bad words. She goes, I just mean they're not the right words. I said, okay, I'll take it. Not the right words, but the thoughts are down there. And this document might be 20 to 50,000 words. And it's, as a ghostwriter, the type of document I want to write the book from. So you can create that in 90 days. It's easier to do it in 90 days than it is to do it in a longer period. Many of them were getting done in 60 days now. So here's the essence of it. There's 7 questions you need to answer before you go into this. And we have classes that I do 8 times a year where it's a handful of authors, one's tomorrow, and we look at these 7 questions and we talk about it. If you're already working on your book, I encourage people to attend those, because it's a speaking engagement for you. It starts to promote this book that you're creating. Also, I believe thoughts are clarified in conversation. So in conversation with other people and listening to other people, I get that a lot from people after the class. Is that I didn't know how much I was going to gain by hearing what other people said as they were going. Also, the rounds give me time to think about my answer and reformulate it. So that's what we do. It takes 3 hours. Our next one is tomorrow. And Devin, our associate editor-in-chief, Devin, when's the next one after that? Putting Devin on the spot.
October
27th.
27.
October 27th will be the next one. So if you want to get in on that. And it's $365 for the class, but anyone on this call, I would comp in. Also, if you're one of our authors and you want to comp somebody into that class, I will waive the $365 fee just if they use your name. Okay, so that's first part. Oh, I don't have time to attend the class. Ask Henry for the 7 questions. Take the 7 questions and go over them. The next thing is start thinking about the blueprint for the book. And that's chapter 2 in my book, Marketing with a Book. Again, happy to get you a no-cost copy if you want that. Chapter 2 takes you through these questions to get you thinking about what's the type of book. Then what's really working after that is when somebody hires us to ghostwrite a book, during the planning phase, I will fly to wherever they're at to spend 2 days with them. Luckily, I didn't have to fly to Beverly Hills these last 2 days. I could just drive up there. But I'm going to Pittsburgh in September and Minneapolis, and then in October, I'm off to Colorado. And so I do about 2 of these a month, where we spend 2 days. The program that we're beta testing is, if we just did those 60 days and we did instead of me traveling somewhere for 2 days, if I did 2 3-hour sessions with you and recorded the interviews with you, put all the interviews into a document, clean it up, and then also insert some other content like competitive books and articles you're going to want to quote all in one document. That's your sloppy first copy. So we call that the the beta testing the express train program, and it's $2,400. We're only taking 5. The cohort starts September 14th. We're going to get everybody's sloppy first copy done by the end of the year. Now, let's say you're a do-it-yourselfer. It's the same process. If you don't have somebody to help you think through these things, which I recommend, I think writing's a team sport. But if you want to do the misery approach, where you go it alone, named after the Stephen King movie and novel of somebody going to a cabin. Well, actually, Kathy Bates with a sledgehammer made the writer stay in the cabin, not included in this. But I've done the misery approach several times to write books and I don't go to mountain cabins. I'm more of a resort guy. So I like to go to a nice resort and power through. And usually a couple of days, just me alone, thinking through these issues. And then I really recommend you have an outline, and then you record yourself on the outline, and then use a service like rev.com, or there's these AI services now where you can just use that. So record yourself and transcribe it. My rev.com robot costs 25 cents a minute. So I used a version of this during the pandemic to help the president of one of the top 10 pharmas in the US, can't name names, write a book. And we did it in an hour a week for 16 weeks. So we planned the book out, and then instead of the big intense 3-hour session, he liked to reflect each week. So we did an outline, and then he went and recorded it in 15 minutes, gave it to me. I transcribed it. We put that together. And in 16 weeks, because he had 16 chapters, 16 essays, he completed the book. And then we spent another month cleaning it up. The magic is in the rewrite. But first, you have to get it out of your head and off the internet and down in a semblance of order. And I always say, don't go back during that period and revise anything or rewrite it until you get the sloppy first copy done that is given to the writer to finish. You might be the writer. You might hire a writer. Some people want to write the book, and that's worked this year, and I'm the editor. I do believe writing is a team sport. You need feedback from somebody. There was a mental health clinic in San Diego, and they had a great ad years ago. And they always ended the ad with, if you don't get help from us, get help from somebody. So that's true with mental health, and I think it's true with writing a book. It can be very lonely writing a book, and the traps open up. The perfection trap, my book's not perfect. The comparison trap, oh, people are going to compare this to Good to Great or Eat, Pray, Love, and it's not going to measure up. No, it's not one of those books. It's your books, and it has your stories in it. Oh, that's key. This chapter is not like these chapters you're recording. It's not just a professor telling people what they could do, should do. You're also telling stories to illustrate it. So you have to have a list that you made in advance of what are my stories where I helped somebody. So I see Jamie Shibley here. Jamie has stories about clients, say immigration attorneys, who through her practice that helps them with relationship building, usually through strategic gift giving and curated gift giving. That's going to be interesting in her book because it's not just here's something, here's a, what do we call these, a tchotchke, here's something with our logo on it. There has to be like a reason you gave somebody that. And Jamie has great stories about the power of that. Those belong in her book. What belongs in your book? So you need a story list. Human brains are hardwired for stories. Your stories matter. What makes your book different than everyone else's book, and nobody can do it, are your stories. Laura Hicks in her book about her blue circles and the relationships, and she has actual stories. She's also an assessment expert, and she speaks the language of DISC. And she'll talk about somebody was a high D, and I sent them to go meet high S, and what happened as a result. And it's an interesting story because it's hers and her language. Laura, I hope you don't mind me paraphrasing your story there. Okay, so that is the approach. And now we just wanted to open it up to questions about writing a book, preparing a book, publishing a book, or promoting a book. All questions are good. Oh, also, we're building the community here, so we invite you not to be promotional. It's not a sales opportunity, but it's a relationship building and networking opportunity. Please put your name and email address and who you are and what you do. That would be interesting. So I see a first question, Jamie Shibley, the relationship expert, the expressory. Can you use ChatGPT to help with thoughts? Then she has a follow-up question. First, ChatGPT. Yes, you can. And an author yesterday said to me, I did it, and it's like a 15-year-old wrote an essay for me, and then I'm going to use this to write a book to CEOs of Fortune 500 corporations. He said, yeah, it just didn't cut it. There are legal implications if you because there's some people that let ChatGPT write your book. And Amazon is saying, don't publish that book with Amazon. And there's people in the federal government who said, don't expect to copyright that book. So the overuse of it. I've heard some good things, though, about if you ask it nicely and ask it again and again, it's a research tool. Laura, I'm going to do her follow-up and then I'll get to you.
I usually, but real quick, I want to go on
Please.
that thread though, because I find that where I get stuck is a white page, right? And so I might have some idea of the opening. And if I feed it the opening and I watch how it writes it, I'm usually able to run from there. But then I worried, but I think you gave me my answer. My fear was, how much am I already putting out there before the book is written? And you don't want to give it all away, right? So,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, then the next thing you'd want to do on a version is use Grammarly's plagiarism checker. So you should run it through in case. One of our authors, and he didn't know it, but he had a big part of his book about you should work on your business, not just in your business. We get so busy working in our business, we forget to work on our business. And I said, that's a great thought. And when Michael Gerber wrote it in the E-Myth, it was an exceptional thought. If people read this, they're going to say you ripped off Michael Gerber. He goes, oh, I never read that, but he didn't know where he picked it up in the ether. Ether, is that the right word? Anyway, the universe. So you have to be careful of that and run things through. There have been other examples where people oh, wow, yeah. And we have to nurture them and say, it's very interesting. But Gandhi was the one who said it and talked about it. So either we need to attribute it to Gandhi or we need to come up with something that's yours. So that's one of my worries about ChatGPT. So I'm going to take Laura's question.
Well, I have no clue what ChatGPT is. And when you say an AI tool, I have no clue what that is.
Is that your question?
Yeah.
Okay, there's been a revolution since last fall that an artificial intelligence program that's free or an upgrade for low cost has come out that is putting writers out of business. People who were writing blogs and social media posts and all these things, because you feed questions into it and it produces answers. So I've written a column in Forbes.com if you're interested in learning more what it's about and also the issues, because educators lost their stuff. They lost their minds when this happened, because students were using this chat GPT, basically a chat bot or a robot, to write their term papers and turn them in. And some professors at universities say, okay, it's a tool. They're learning how to do that. You know, how is that different than Googling things and other people
Right.
saying an outrage? But and from our research, you ain't seen nothing yet. Chat GPT right now is like a person who has an IQ of 160. Genius level is over 135. But they're working on one that'll be 10 times smarter. So it'll have a 1600 IQ. So this is just coming. There have been, the people are so afraid of it. Some of the people who invented it have quit their powerful positions at Google and other places because they're worried that this is going to lead to the end of civilization. And they're on 60 Minutes with an interview on it. Other
Yeah,
people are
it's pretty
saying,
insane.
get over it. You know, it's just another tool, and it can't do strategy. It can report what strategy is out there. Oh, by the way, all the information that's in it is 2 years old. So anything more recent isn't in it. There's an issue. And I remember my students at the university, when I showed them something that was like 6 months old, and they said, this is 6 months old. I was real proud that I had something within the year. And this, we need more up-to-date information on this, professor. Like, oh boy. So different demands out there for currency. So more than you wanted to know, but you should hear about this, because what are the implications for ChatGPT and the assessment industry? I'm sure there are some. And we
So
don't
do I
want to be the
Google?
buggy whip manufacturer, the person who says, I don't need this newfangled tool thing. Get those kids off my lawn, and you'll be the last person not using ChatGPT. And
So is this something available on the internet? Is it a product you purchase?
it's
I
a
mean,
product on the internet. The first version is free. Yeah, it's kind of like drug dealers. The first hit is free, and then after a while they're going to charge you. So there's upgrades and things like that. But yeah, people are playing around with it. My
If you're gonna,
7-year-old CEO authors are playing around with this. It's
sorry, if you're gonna do it, if you look into it, it's worth the $20 a month version. You just get your updates and better connectivity. It's worth starting to learn about, Laura, for sure.
Yeah, Brenda's
Okay.
put the link in the chat.
You basically just go ask it questions. Like, write a social post for me about blah, blah, blah. It'll write a report, it'll write your email, it'll write everything.
You can also download an app on your phone and type it in what you want. It takes longer to type it in, but it's kind of fun to play with if you're just sitting around somewhere.
Cool. I had no clue. Thank you.
Well, you learned something new today, didn't you?
I guess I've been like under a rock for the last year.
Well, and tomorrow when somebody says something about, Laura, do you know what ChatGPT is? You'll go like, you don't know about ChatGPT? Oh, let me tell
I
you.
will not be that cruel.
That teenager.
But I will go check this out later this afternoon.
Okay. People worry about talking to the computers. We've been talking to Siri and Alexa for a while.
Yeah.
It's just doing that. Brenda, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I was thinking about even planning for tomorrow because I would love to attend that event. And you mentioned the 7 questions, and then I can find it in your chapter 2 of your book. But my question is I plan my book, and I actually wrote 50,000 words once and hated it. Planning it out, making that outline, are there kind of like structures of what's going to be a good flow that you help out with? Or do I make that up on my own?
Oh, yes. No. Many have tread this path before. So we're talking business books. there's 3 basic ones we recommend. And I wrote my first version of Marketing with a Book in 2015, and chapter 2 is about one of the 3. So that one is what I call the proprietary process book. So if you're a consultant, if you're a speaker, if you're an expert, you probably don't know it, but you have a proprietary process, which can be intellectual property, which can be differentiating, because, let's say an HR consultant. Well, there's 10 HR consultants, but one has, and we'll go with hiring. One has the impact hiring methodology, TM, a 7-step process for improving hires and having employees meet expectations. Okay. And then your book is about that. So it's basically what we call the 10-chapter business book, 3 parts. Part 1, why this matters. So chapter 1 is the pain-stirring chapter about whatever the problem is. That's question 2 of the 7 questions. If you want to come tomorrow, it's 9 to noon, and you shoot an email to Devin, and she'll get you the 7 questions in advance. But don't worry, it's not like school. It's not, I'm going to go, wrong, Brenda. It's a conversation. There are no right or wrong answers. There's only conversations. So chapter 2 is the how to do this in general. It's an overview of your proprietary process. And then it's about the guide. So it's your aha moment, your epiphany moment, how you came to realize the solution to this because you used to struggle with it yourself. Now your mission is to share this information. It's what the reader needs to know is like, do I listen to this author? What qualifies them to give me this information? Oh, this qualifies them to give me this information. Next, part 2 of the book, you take your process, you break it into 6 to 8 chapters. Henry, are there instructions on how to do this? Yes, I've written monographs on all of this. And if you ask me for anything, I'll be happy to give you the monograph. What's a monograph, you might say? When I was reading Sherlock Holmes as a youth, and I read the complete Sherlock Holmes, which is a book that thick. In the Sherlock Holmes story, something will come up and he says, Watson, you must read my monograph on the 274 different tobaccos sold in the UK and their burn rates. And I read that and I thought, dang, one day I'm going to write monographs and give them to people. And I have. I've got about 36 of them right now on every aspect of writing and planning a book. I digress. Part 3 is what comes next. How do you sustain it? How do you build a culture? What's looking into the future? Second type of book, and this has been a trend, I would say, in the last 8 years. And a person who wrote about it is one of my mentors and someone who I've followed and written about for years, David C. Baker. And it's in his book, The Business of Expertise. And he calls it the 20 aha essays. If you're in the business of expertise, you don't want to say the same old, ChatGPT. You want to have 20 insightful opinions and back it up. And we've said that makes chapters. So in my book, Marketing with a Book for Agency Owners, I believe this is 22 essays that string together. It's easier to write. It's easier to read. People like them better. It's easier to use them as excerpts. I'll use chapters for my Agency Rainmaker newsletter as part of my content plan. So that's it. Third one is, and if you're familiar with the works of Ken Blanchard, who wrote The 1 Minute Manager, Spencer Johnson, Who Moved My Cheese, Bob Berg, The Go Giver, this is what I call the fable or novella. It's a fictional tale about somebody who has a problem in business. They go see this mentor character The mentor character says it's not going to be easy, gives them a series of tests. They survive all the tests, and in the end, they succeed. And 1 Minute Manager, the manager's, suffering. He's thrown in as a manager, no training. He sees the 1 Minute Manager, who is really like Ken Blanchard in disguise, a management professor who just teaches him some simple concepts to do. But human brains are hardwired for stories. Most of Ken Blanchard's 50 books, 60 books are these novellas, these fictional tales to teach. Okay, those are the 3. So are there others? Sure. But what's 80% of the market that's working? These 3. One that's out there that's not working, but it's in the market, I call it the grandpa story, where you're just wandering aimlessly talking about things and stuff. And it's like people are like, how do we make sense of this? The other thing people want to do, and I'm not looking at anyone on this call exactly, they want to do a memoir. And I go, no, not a memoir. It's not an it's not your autobiographical tale. It's not that. It needs to be about the reader. So your life stories can illustrate important lessons. So you lead with the lessons and then you tell your story. I think that's just another version of the essay book. Okay. Is that helpful?
Yes, it's very helpful. I think I like the idea too, the second one. And the first it all sounds good. My one question, and this might be off a little bit, but like, what makes Atomic Habits so powerful?
Devin, do you want to talk about that? Because you're a fan of that book.
I am a fan of that book. I would say that's a really good example of he starts right out of the gate with a really strong story. And in his case, it is his story and kind of how he ended up on this path. But it really grabs you. And then I think the other thing is it's digestible tips and lessons. And, there's things that you can apply quickly. But throughout the book, he supports them all with example stories. And those are the ones that stick. I mean, all the ones that I've told Henry about from that book are like stories, about, like the airplane, like if an airplane's only a few degrees off, like what happened, so things like that is what sticks. And then, he also, there's a little bit of that magic luck piece where it got picked up and people started sharing it with the others and it grew from there. So, but I feel like a lot of that comes from having engaging stories that people really connect with.
I was a co-author of a book with 2 professors, and I am not a PhD. I am an MBA and a journalist. And the first 2 sections of the book, one was a sociological research and one was economic research. And then as the journalist in residence, mine was all stories. And they wanted to get Ken Blanchard's endorsement. This is how I met Ken Blanchard. So somebody knew Ken Blanchard. They gave him the book. Ken calls in from Europe, a little conference call, and says, I will endorse this book on this condition. All those stories you have at the end, move them up to the start. Engage people with all these stories. Then give them the economic and sociological research underpinnings behind it. So Ken is a heat-seeking missile for interesting. If you've got a really interesting story, Ms. Angie, you might lead with that right away and, unabashedly do it. I wrote a newsletter a couple of weeks back called The World Does Not Need Another Crappy Business Book. And my point on this was we don't need one of these books that just throws up all these concepts and regurgitated things that we've already known and puts in some quotes from Oprah and Gandhi. And and gets them right. Who said which? But anyway, we don't need another book like that. We do need your insights and wisdom and your stories like Atomic Habits to back it up. Do we have another question? Is there one in chat that I missed? Devin?
Yeah, well, we had one earlier from Jamie that you missed about if you can pull the stories from existing blogs.
Oh, thank you for asking it. I am a big believer in recycling. You recycle yourself. So when I interview people for my TV show, Agency Rainmaker TV, we're transcribing those and they can pop into stories. When I interviewed people for my Forbes.com column, we use those. And then those columns became, because I own the rights to all of those after 5 days. Forbes gets exclusive use of it for 5 days. Then they can post it forever on their website. And I have the right to use it any way I want. So that's just the legal thing. You have to have the legal rights to do it. But those go into my books, into my newsletters. They go into my weekly tips. So all those things, yes, you do want to reuse. And I'll quote advertising great David Ogilvy, who wrote such bestsellers as Confessions of an Advertising Man and Ogilvy on Advertising. He said, we communicate not to a standing army, but to a passing parade. So even if they read you 2 years ago, they don't remember it. Or they'll, oh yeah, it'll be a nice reminder to them.
So I have half my book started.
Yay. Yes, that was a big insight. And I forgot to mention it when we work with people. I say, give me everything that you've already written on this. Do you do blogs? Most people don't know a 3-hour workshop. Laura does workshops, so we went through this. Her workshop was a book. We just needed to put it into book format because like a play is different than a movie, is different than a novel. A business book is different than a business workshop or seminar. However, most of the content, 80% of the content is perfectly fine. A matter of fact, it's better than when people start with what you call that blank sheet of paper. I liken it to when Chris Rock was given the MC duties for the Academy Awards, a decade ago. And we live in Southern California, and there were reports that Chris Rock was showing up randomly at comedy clubs throughout Southern California and just asking for 5 minutes on the program. And sure, the owner's like, hey, Chris Rock for free. Everybody's all thrilled. He was testing his material that he was going to use in the Academy Awards. I paid $100 once to see Joan Rivers in Las Vegas. Now it'd be a lot more. And then I was in New York, and across from my hotel, there was this little club, and it said Joan Rivers, $5. It was a Monday night. I said, was that a typo? He goes, no, $5 cover charge, no drink minimum. Monday night, Joan Rivers, she's going to do an hour set. I said, sign me up. So I go in there. It was great. It was even better when I heard it a month later on her HBO special. So I really believe in workshopping your material, and you can workshop it on Zoom. You can workshop it in an actual live seminar. The live seminars are coming back. We just did one in Chicago. Oh, Jamie was there. We had about 35 people in the room, and several of us speakers, and many of us are writing business from that. Yeah, that's coming back. So, Jamie, you asked me what time it was. I told you how to make a watch. Thank you for the question. Went deep on that. Any other questions? Well, if I
have put it in the chat, but
I
want to
thanks,
go
Laura.
back to, because Henry, I've known you for, I want to say at least 10 or 15 years now.
I believe we were children. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, and I remember that there are different types of books. And I s- I don't know how to choose wisely, like which one. So do you have some like help decision making criteria for me?
Thanks. So when I have conversations with people, the first thing I listen for is, do they have a process? My author yesterday is from Canada, so we were talking about the process. Do you have a process, as we say in Toronto? So, and some people like have them and don't even realize. So I help them find that they do have this hidden asset. And I have a monograph on how to create your process. So if you have that, and this is to build your business, that's good. The next thing is, it's not so much a process, but I have lots of insights. A variation, this is from the author yesterday, of the 20 essays, we're going with 77. And I know David Newman, who's written bestsellers, Do It Marketing, Do It Sales, Do It Speaking. He's a big proponent of 77 little chapters. Oh, Jamie, a lot of recycled stuff in those books. So he's taken his blogs and his essays and articles and all that and repurposing it this way, with a unifying theme. So if that's how you feel, if you have a very a one-page message. Somebody once said, Henry, most business books are 8 to 9 pages of content, and then you give them another 150 pages of fluff. And I said, shh, it's actually the fluff or the stories and other things to illustrate it in depth. But most of us, what we have to say could be a good article. We could say it in 2,000 words. But if it's even what you have to say is less than that, Ken Blanchard basically had one message was, tell people what to do, observe them, and then catch them doing it right. ABC. That's what the 1 Minute Manager is about. See, I can still tell you that. The other point of it, but he would tell little stories, the 1 Minute Manager, when he's explaining this to the person. Like he likened, says SeaWorld, and this has become controversial, and I haven't been to SeaWorld in a decade because of it, but it's the orcas, the Shamus up there. And so the point in his story was, how do they get Shamu to jump 20 feet out of the water? Do they comb the oceans looking for Shamus that jump 20 feet out of the water and capture them? No, they capture the average orca, and they put them in a tank, and they put a rope at the bottom of the tank. And every time the orca swims over the rope, they give it a fish. Orcas are smart. They realize, hey, I should swim over this rope a lot. And then they raise the rope. And it goes, oh, when I go under the rope, I don't get a fish. When I go over the rope, I get a fish. Over the rope. They keep raising it till it gets to the surface of the water. And the orca says, well, I guess I got to jump over the rope to get the fish. They keep raising the rope. And the orca will be, hey, look at me. I can jump 20 feet out of the water to get the fish. Says, that's like your people. They don't take a stick and beat the orca. He says some people trying to potty train their dog will, when the dog makes a mess, they'll get a rolled up newspaper, swat the dog, and throw him out the window or the door. He says, soon your dog will make a mess in your house and jump out the window, because that's what you've trained it to do. Oh, time to avoid the SWAT. So I can recall those stories, and I haven't read that book in 30 years. But he had a very simple message. So that's my criteria of which way do you want to go? Clear as mud? Useful? So sometimes it's in conversation with people that, what was the expression I heard? Jamie, we've heard this. I forget who coined it in our group, but you can't read the label from inside the wine bottle. So it's a lot easier for me to hear people's story and say, oh, you're telling a quest story. It's a journey for a prize. You have a proprietary process that people go through. It has 6 steps. And they're like, oh, where are you getting all this from? I said, you just told it all to me. I was taking notes. But I knew what to listen for. And then you can see. Same thing with you with those assessments. A lot of people can take that assessment, get a score, but have no idea what to do with it. They don't know they need to adapt their behavior when they talk to a high D and get right to the point and give them options. It's not the time for a high I, high S, a little schizophrenic there, to come in and tell them about my weekend and then ask them about their weekend. That's the path to disaster on those meetings. So you have great insights like that. And with Tony Alessandra's book that we did, for them, that they have 5 assessments. So that's really their process, are these 5 assessments. So that's how we determined that was a proprietary process book. His platinum rule could have been a novella. It's a pretty simple concept.
He actually has the book called The Platinum Rule.
Yeah, but I if I recall reading it, because he is a, Notre Dame, Georgia State educated professor, and he approaches it from that dictate, versus Ken Blanchard, the Cornell professor, who is a maverick long ago and just decided he was going to do things different. Blanchard is such a maverick, he got in trouble at Cornell, and I adopted this when I taught at UC San Diego. Blanchard hands out the final exam on the first class. And everybody like, what? They think it's a trick. He goes, no, this is the final exam. You're going to take this on the last day, and your grade will determine your grade for the course. And they go, what's the catch? He goes, oh, the catch is I'm going to teach you the answers to the exam over the next 10 weeks. So, and the other faculty hated him for that. And he said, why is it wrong for me to be clear with my expectations of what I want them to learn and then facilitate the learning? So anyway, that's maverick thinking. Okay, any other questions? When you're in my class, I'm going to ask you the information question, by the way. And that's something when you finished your book and you're talking to a journalist, or you're talking to, this is the final point, you're talking to a journalist or a meeting planner, and they ask you about your book, you need to say, my book has blank information on the subject. New information on the subject? That's very rare that there's some new scientific discovery. But the books about Chat GPT this year are new information on a subject, because we didn't know about this. You can say you have more information. That's like writing the 1001 ways to market your books. That book with 1,000 pages. Don't write that book, by the way. Better information means you've analyzed and you've done best practices, or you have different information on the subject. You're a different thinker. You're a bit of a contrarian. You come at it from a different angle, Ms. Angie. I see you're already laughing. Yeah. Okay. All those fancy psychologists say this.
I'm going to call it unique. I have a unique
You have a
perspective.
unique perspective. Sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah. But those are important for the reader to know. Oh, you say, well, I'm different. I'm not. Craig Lauder, our marketing expert, has a paragraph in his book about that he didn't graduate from an Ivy League school and he didn't come out of the Fortune 500 and this, and it's more like this comes from the school of hard knocks. And well, but he also has an MBA, by the way, and he's tested a lot of things, but he just wanted to set that tone that this is not your typical business book. I'm going to give you something different. Okay. Thank you much. There's going to be a recording of this that Devin gets out there. Devin, I mentioned some things. Is there a monograph we should include that we send out to people?
Do you want me to send the 7 questions to everybody?
Sure, I think they'd like that.
Okay.
Let's send the 7
I think I've
questions.
done that class.
I think you have too.
I think I've done it
Last
twice.
you want, Miss Angie, is the 2-day marketing retreat, which is September 21st and 22nd.
Okay, I
And
think
where
it's
you're
on my
in
calendar.
conversations with other authors on how you're going to shine a spotlight on this book.
Yes.
How you're going to
Oh,
publish
it's
a book
not
that
on
you're
my
proud
calendar.
of. Get
Is
it
it
on the
virtual?
calendar.
Is it virtual?
It is virtual.
So you're gonna send me something?
I'll send you the details.
Devin, send
Thank you,
something.
Devin.
Only
I love you,
we only
Devin.
do one live event once a year now, and it's the Indie Family and Friends Forum. And Devin has a document on my desk on the date. I guess we're picking a September date now. We need to move it to September, and we'll be telling everybody about that date. So if you're one of our authors, that's going to be 50 to 100 Hall of Fame speakers, New York Times bestsellers, the Indie Family, and it's interactions for 2 days. And the idea is you come out of there. Well, Jamie came out of there with that. Jamie, you want to testify for 1 minute on 60 seconds on what that was for you?
Yeah, I mind blowing. It was such a supportive community. I mean, I was new to the group, and you feel immediately part of the family.
Oh, wow.
And I have made some fantastic connections that we've all already been helping each other, and it's just great to be part of.
Yeah. So we created something different, and there's no quid pro quo. There's no you have to do something for somebody or they have to do something for you. But when you get the right people together in a room, magic happens.
Henry, is this the same or is this different than the workshop that I went to probably about 12 years ago with Lynn Kaufman, Michael Valentine, and La Jolla?
It is different. We started this 9 years ago, and our intent was to make this invitation only and bring in really top people. I can't afford to pay any of them. I mean, Ken Blanchard has come, Tony Alessandra, these people, and they just, Patricia Fripp, first president of the National Speaker Association, they're just there to help those of us on the way up. Not like any of us are kids, but they're the mentors with wisdom and experience, and they're showing the way. Okay, thank you everybody for attending our Q&A, and look forward to seeing you on another. You're welcome to attend anyone, and see you again. Thanks. Thanks, Devin. Thanks, everybody.